All right. So yeah, we can go off of the top with the B-roll here, right?
Hell yeah, man. Yep,
Because
we're in
we because we
15 minutes.
okay. So we did a two video kind of series on video game adaptations of, or my bad, live action adaptations of video games. And we mentioned that there have been three different Tomb Raider movies based on Lara Croft, and that those movies were kind of in the middle in terms of box office and critical reception.
Right.
This past week, I watched Tomb Raider from 2018, starring Alicia Vikander. I hope I'm saying her name correctly. And I feel one of the more underrated actors throughout, television and movies. A gentleman by the name of Dominic West. Dominic
Hmm.
West starred as Detective Jimmy McNulty on the greatest TV show ever produced, The Wire. And he also, for people who didn't watch The Wire, please watch The Wire. He
Classic.
also he also starred as Jigsaw in Punisher Warzone. Um, he fits more into the category of a method actor per se, in that he fits into the character that he's playing as opposed to playing the character off of a part of his personality. But digress. So with Tomb Raider, a couple of the things that jumped out to me as I was watching it, right?
Hmm.
While the 2 hour runtime of the movie was probably 20-25 minutes too long, like the second half of that movie should have been the beginning of the movie. We didn't need to see the origin of Laura Croft prior to her going on the adventure. The main draw of the Tomb Raider video games, which, if for us being 90s kids, from the mid 90s to the early 2000s, Tomb Raider was the go to game to play as far as action adventure goes. It
No
doesn't get,
doubt.
in terms of gameplay and just the things that you could do as a solo one player experience, Tomb Raider was either number one, two, or three. Undisputed. There's no arguing that, correct?
Yeah, correct. Wouldn't be touched until the Uncharted series with Nathan Drake.
Absolutely. Well, and I'd argue it wouldn't be touched until they fucked up and released Tomb Raider Angel of Darkness, but that's a different conversation.
Yeah, yeah.
That game was ass.
I remember as soon as you said
So
Angel of
fucking.
Darkness, man, it was like, oh, flashback, like
Oh,
memories right
dog.
there, yo.
Dog. Tomb Raider Angel of Darkness was ass, bro. But yeah, I just had to highlight that. But Angelina Jolie, as far as I'm concerned, she embodied the, how do I put this? She embodied the video game esque aspects of that character throughout the two movies where she played Laura Croft. Those
Hmm.
two movies, while they weren't bad, weren't anything that necessarily stuck on the scoreboard, but for the time when they came out, it was acceptable because it's like, holy shit. You got Angelina Jolie, who is still kind of young in her prime on the rise as an actress, playing arguably the most popular female video game protagonist ever, right? So Tomb
Yeah,
Raider and Tomb Raider Cradle of Life were movies that came out during a time where you didn't expect to see those type of movies come out. I've only seen both of those movies one time. They're not the worst video game movies ever made, but aside from Angelina Jolie kind of hamming it up as Laura Croft, there isn't a whole lot to go back to. You get to see her, you get to see Angelina Jolie with the twin 9 millimeters. You get to see her in the shorts. You get to see her with the strap around her leg. You get to see all of that, right? But there's
right.
no real substance to what it is that you're seeing because of the time that it came out and just the way that movies were made and the way that video games were perceived during that time when that movie came out. So,
Right.
we fast forward to 2018. And while the movie started out kind of slow, and there's a lot of cues that they took from Batman Begins, like there's literally a scene in the movie where they ripped off Batman Begins. Remember in Batman Begins when Bruce Wayne comes back from his sabbatical and like nobody knows that he's Bruce Wayne when he comes back to Wayne Enterprises? You remember that part of the movie?
Yeah, I remember when he came back.
It's not a secret. Anyone that's kind of up on their thing and does the knowledge the way that they should knows that they took that part of the movie from there. Like, if you work for Croft Enterprises over in the UK, you can't pretend that you don't know who Laura Croft is, even if you haven't seen her as an adult, right?
Right, right.
But the first thing that stuck out to me as I watched this movie is the character of Laura Croft never made it a secret that she was filthy rich.
Nah.
Like, so this movie begins with Laura Croft as a bike delivery food, you know what I'm saying, delivery person who's
Mm.
struggling to pay her gym dues at the local MMA gym. When, if you played Tomb Raider or were familiar with Tomb Raider, she was never ashamed of this abundance of wealth that she had. She used her abundance of wealth to be educated on archaeology, to be trained in martial arts, to be trained in marksmanship, to where while she was on these adventures, she was self-sufficient to where she couldn't or didn't have to rely on a male figure to take care of her, right? Or at least that's the perception I got. How you feel about that?
No, no, I think you're spot on with that, man. And especially in the video games, and I guess if you want to call the comics as well. I think this was a move to ground her. I think this was a move to make her more relatable to the common, you know what I'm saying? I guess to the
Right,
common moviegoer to see her appeal and try
right.
to make her more relatable to women, whoever would have seen this film.
So while I do kind of understand and respect that, I never felt it was necessary for Laura Croft to have to be humbled, right? Because at least I've never played. Okay, let me back up here. I know for a fact that this newer version of Laura Croft that we see in Tomb Raider from 2018 is based on or inspired by the new trilogy or the most current trilogy of games published,
Yeah.
right?
Hmm.
Tomb Raider, Rise of the Tomb Raider, Shadow of the Tomb Raider, which apparently are pretty great action adventure games. But for me, I never felt like Laura Croft was forced because it was never implied that she was ashamed of the wealth that she had. It was, for me, it always felt like that character used the wealth that she was born into as a means to appreciate being an archaeologist. Like, I never got the vibe that her being an archaeologist was just a hobby that she got into because she was bored. Because if that was the case, she wouldn't be killing people the way that she did. Like, you wouldn't be skilled as a marksman, or you wouldn't be willing to be attacked by fucking wolves and lions and alligators that looked creepy as hell on these low resolution
PS1
graphics.
graphics, yeah.
Bro, oh my, like, listen, man.
The jump scares and that shit.
Oh, dog. I can't even put into words to this day. Like, from watching my auntie play Tomb Raider on Sega Saturn, and rest in peace to the Sega Saturn, from watching her play that game on Sega Saturn as a 29-year-old adult male, I have no shame in admitting I am still to this day afraid of animals, afraid of getting attacked by animals on video games from watching her play Tomb Raider, dog. But that
Yeah,
ain't got
man.
nothing to do. That ain't got nothing to do with this, and I don't want to get too long winded, but that's a fact, right?
Right.
So you think about this character. She's using her abundance of wealth to travel to these exotic locations and find these artifacts to protect the artifacts. Her motivation is to preserve cultures that have already passed. So because of that, she's not ashamed to use the resources that she has at her disposal. In this movie, I would have liked to have seen a little bit more of that, but they made their best efforts to try to make her more humble. And it works in spots and it doesn't work in some other spots, right?
Okay.
So I know that a criticism in modern film that makes certain people feel a type of way. And I'm going to use two movies, or one movie and one TV series as an example. I still haven't seen Captain Marvel, and shame on me because we need to do a movie of the week on Captain Marvel.
Yeah, for sure, man. A lot of unpacking that one too.
But my question for you is, having gone to the theater to see that, would you say that one of the criticisms for Edgelord Reddit and Edgelord Twitter is that the character of Carol Danvers, Captain Marvel, was a little bit too angry or a little bit too edgy without having an explanation for her being as angry as edgy as she was?
Yeah, no, definitely. She was perceived by these guys as an angry feminist and an angry woman, and I can do bad by myself.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Alpha female for no reason. That's why they hated her. They
and
hated her
and
because, yeah, on
and
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 off screen. But we won't go too into that.
and I mean, like, one of the things that stuck out to me in particular with the portrayal of Laura Croft is that that was something that I could tell was avoided. You know, the opening
Yeah.
scene to the movie, you see Laura Croft getting beat down by an MMA fighter in an
Mm,
MMA gym. Like, she takes the L as soon as the movie starts, right?
right.
And I understand it because it looks like she's being humbled before you see her get into situations where her life is on the line. My only counter argument to that is that if there was ever a female protagonist that should be the coolest person in the room, it needs to be Laura Croft. it, it,
Yeah, she's one of the
it,
coolest for a reason.
It needs to be Laura Croft. Laura Croft is getting on a private jet and then being dropped off in Nepal. You know what I'm saying? And then climbs up the mountain and kills the wolves and escapes the bear traps and kills the mercenaries. I can accept Laura Croft in that role because none of it, and this is very strange because this is a character that came out of the 90s, right? And
Hmm.
everything in the, not everything, but there's a lot of media that came out of the 90s that was perceived as being very forced and unnatural. Laura Croft felt more natural than Duke Nukem. You know what I'm saying?
Hail
Like,
to the king, baby.
and I loved it. Oh God. Oh man. Shout out to Duke Nukem, right? Duke
Right.
Nukem 3D. But Laura Croft felt more natural than a lot of those 90s era protagonists because it made sense. Because as you played Tomb Raider, you as the player were in these dangerous situations, right? And you had to
Hmm.
play your way out of it. When those lions attacked you, when you got attacked by that pack of wolves, when that big ass, low resolution, creepy as fuck T Rex came out of nowhere and all you had was 245s, you had to get through that situation, right?
Right. Right.
You had to get through these puzzles without a strategy guide. But not only that, but you did it as Laura Croft. And Laura Croft was confident enough in storyline to get you through that. So to see this character go through the humbling process in this movie was a little bit different, right? And
Right.
initially, I didn't like it. Initially, I felt like, all right, this is a little bit out of place. This doesn't really make sense because Laura Croft, yeah, she might get beat up or whatever, but she's not going to get presented as being helpless. There's a
Mhm.
scene during the first act of the movie where three teenagers run up on her with a switchblade and like chase her, you know what I'm saying? Chase her
Mm.
all around like a loading dock or whatever, right?
Okay.
And in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, okay, if this was Angelina Jolie's version of Laura Croft, these three fucking punks wouldn't even have the balls to like
No.
engage in conversation with her, right?
No, they would have been handled.
You know, like, and you know, like that version of the character, because she ends up going to Hong Kong, I believe, or somewhere in China, right? That
Right.
version, Angelina Jolie's version of Laura Croft would have known how to speak Chinese. She wouldn't be walking around the loading dock speaking English, asking certain characters, you know, do you speak English? Or having characters speak back to her in Chinese, not knowing it, right? And initially,
Yeah.
I'll be honest, that bothered me because like in my mind, I'm thinking Laura Croft probably knows 10 different languages because that's how we were presented, right?
Hmm.
But then I kind of backtrack a little bit and I think, okay, I do know that there is a certain demographic who views movies and would probably be bothered if we were presented with the 1995 version of Laura Croft in 2018. So, knowing that, it's okay to see her get humbled a little bit. And then, midway through the movie, you see the Tomb Raider actually show up in the movie.
Hmm.
The only thing that I would have liked to have seen is Laura Croft actually appear as the Tomb Raider sooner. It wasn't, I didn't like that we had to get through half of the movie before the character that we showed up to watch actually performed in a way to where it's like, all right, this makes sense right here. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Almost like not filler, but almost like it was a forced progression, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because in the year 2018, Mary Sue's were questionable at that point.
Right, right. And the thing is, like, I never felt like Laura Croft was a Mary Sue. I feel wrong even saying that shit, but the internet, you know, the internet is the internet. But
Yeah.
I don't want to get too long winded. This was not a bad movie. If it
Hmm.
wasn't, if it
Hmm.
was, and it was not, it really wasn't a bad movie. The only thing I'll say is that if this movie was not called Tomb Raider, I think the perception of it and the way that the general public viewed it would be different.
Damn. Right. Because it has
And
expectations. You follow behind Angelina Jolie
mm-hmm,
and her portrayal of Laura. I mean, those are some heavy shoes to fill, man. I mean, I don't know. I know there's a big time gap, but still, when you have
right,
a high profile actress like that, a Hollywood star, and then you hear you come as some of a, somewhat of a newcomer to try to
mm-hmm,
give a different take on it, people already have expectations off those first two films and the video
right,
game trilogy.
absolutely. And and just to even go like one step further than that, as I'm watching this movie, the thing that kind of jumps out to me is that okay, and not to make a parallel between these movies, because okay, you went to the theater to watch the 2017 version of Power Rangers, correct?
Yep, I did.
Now, how long throughout that 2 hour and 10-minute film did it take for the Power Rangers to actually show up?
Last 30 minutes till they showed
Right,
up. Yep.
right. So the part of it that just kind of made me feel a certain type of way is I know what I'm watching. I'm watching a movie that's called Tomb Raider, but you're only giving me 30 minutes of the actual Tomb Raider. You know, there's a there's a scene at the end of the movie that pays a little bit of fan service. Throughout this movie, I can honestly point out to you let's see here. I'll say two legitimate moments that pay homage to the original Tomb Raider. There's one like establishing shot scene of Croft Manor that is exactly the same as it was in Tomb Raider 2 with the mansion and the grass mazes out in the front. But that's
Okay.
it. That's a 3 second establishing shot. Anyone who played Tomb Raider 2 on PlayStation 1 knows what I'm talking about with the grass maze and the mansion, right? I would have
Right.
loved to have seen at least one scene in that movie where the butler gets locked in the freezer. Because everybody who played Tomb Raider 2 during that um tutorial level of the game locked the butler in the freezer because that creepy motherfucker followed you everywhere, right?
Right,
But
right.
I mean, yeah, while it would have been lame and cheesy, it at least would have let me know that this is still Tomb Raider, but they didn't do that, right?
Mm.
And at the end of the movie, at the very end of the movie, you get to see Laura Croft with the two twin 9mm pistols.
Damn. And did she put the shades on? She put the sunglasses on or not?
No,
She didn't put the sunglasses on?
no, no people's eyebrow, none of that.
None of that. No shorts with the boots, hiking boots.
Nah, I mean, but I mean, look, I mean, but okay, but throughout the movie, like Laura Croft gets her ass whooped. You know what I'm saying? There are multiple moments where her life is on the line, and I'm not gonna say that you feel the suspense, but it's a stark contrast between this self-assured type of character that you play in the video games where yes she's in dangerous situations but she knows that she's able to get through those situations, right? If
Right.
Laura Croft was taking an L in Tomb Raider, it's because the situation overwhelmed her, not because of ineptitude or because of a lack of knowing what it is that she's doing, right? Like,
Damn.
I would
Right.
never think that the character of Laura Croft would be backed down by anybody. You know what I'm saying? But
Mm-hmm.
digress. I'm going to say that Tomb Raider 2018 was not a bad movie. If it wasn't called Tomb Raider, the perception of it would be very different. That's what I
Mm.
think. And if this and I did a little research on it. If this current situation that we're in right now wasn't actually happening, Tomb Raider 2 already probably would have had promo and either would have been coming out next year or sometime this year. This
Damn.
movie, this movie was good enough to make me want to see what they could do going forward, but it didn't do enough for me to make me confident that they could capture the essence of what Tomb Raider actually was. Like, before I wrap this up, the last thing I want to say, the Tomb Raider video games up until Angel of Darkness were treading that fine line between realistic action adventure and supernatural, but kind of cheesy storytelling that we became accustomed to through like Indiana Jones, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
You got none of those elements in this 2018 version of Tomb Raider. You know what I'm saying? Like the
Yeah.
original Tomb Raider game had you fighting guys with machine guns, but there was also velociraptors that could pop out on your ass out from around the corner. You know what I'm
Right. Or
saying?
mummies or yeah, ancient guys revived or some shit like that. Legend of the Hidden Temple type shit.
Yeah, Legend of the Hidden Temple. Holy shit. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Like none of those elements were there. And I feel like while yes, suspension of disbelief is something that matters, we could have benefited a little bit more from that type of campy kind of, Army of Darkness, Indiana
Mm.
Jones, Mummy Returns type of element to make this movie a little bit more enjoyable. You know what I'm saying? It's
Right.
cool if I can see Laura Croft with a bloody nose and all of that, doing MMA moves and guillotine chokes and all of that, but at the same time, like let me balance that out with some shit that is kind of fun here. You know what I mean?
Right. Where's the smirk? Where's the cocky confidence? Where she
Right.
knows she's got it. You know what I'm saying? A little bit of style to it too, where she slowly progresses into that Laura Croft. I mean, there was a smidgen of it, right? Was there a little bit of that spark of like, okay, yeah, this is the Laura Croft, but damn it, now I gotta get in the second movie, or was it
Right.
still kind of like borderline, not there yet?
We didn't get that until the final scene of the movie.
Okay.
Like, so that means that we had to sit through 2 hours of exposition and kind of like stock characters that you see in every other movie and every other TV show before we actually got to see the Tomb Raider, you know? Like,
Jeez,
uh,
man, sounds like overcorrection a
yeah,
little bit.
exactly. Imagine watching an Indiana Jones movie where he doesn't get the hat and the whip until the closing scene of the movie. Well, that's not Indiana Jones. That's
Yeah, man.
that's imagine a Power Rangers movie where you sit through an 90 minutes of high school drama and bullshit that has nothing to do with, anything that you came into the movie expecting, and Krispy Kreme donuts and and and
Oh
and
man.
and Krispy Kreme donuts, and then during the last 20 minutes of the movie, oh yeah, this is Power Rangers, so let's get Megazord and a transformation and Rita Repulsa taking a bite out of a Krispy Kreme donut.
And tease you for a second movie where you'll get to see them more from the beginning, like that it
Ex-
was in Power Rangers. No.
you see what I'm saying? And
Right.
I don't want to be one of those guys that's saying that's not my Batman, but
Hmm.
in terms of these video game adaptations going live action, the studios can't go forward with this type of content and be embarrassed that it's based on a video game.
Yep. It's almost like it took itself too seriously in an attempt to take itself like to be so it wouldn't be
Mm-hmm.
embarrassed.
Mm-hmm.
And whenever that happens, whenever you got some of these remakes or reboots and it strays away too far from the grain and it's almost completely something else different than what it's based on, then you're almost you basically overcorrected yourself in your theme, in your motif, and you shouldn't even called it what it was. But
Oh man, that's
I mean,
that's too much facts right there.
this is just a Power Ranger fan who had to sit and watch through that bullshit of a Power Ranger movie that shouldn't even been called Power Rangers. It should have been branded as something else. But it is what it is. But I
Right.
definitely feel a little bit of that with Tomb Raider. But I feel like from what you described about it, it kind of still kept a little bit of that Tomb Raider aspect of it. And maybe it's because we never played the recent games. Maybe they were honing in more so on that than the original two that Angelina Jolie did. So it's definitely different than your Captain Marvel or your Ray Skywalker. You know what I'm saying? And that perfect Mary Sue who knows all the languages, who kicks ass, is super confident and is masculine and doesn't take any else throughout the whole film. It almost seems like they just want to do like this wasn't even Laura Croft. Like this was just homegirl who graduated college and was struggling. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? And became like an
Hey,
archaeologist explorer.
bro, like there's a scene in the movie where she finds her long lost father, right? Richard Croft.
Hmm. Okay.
And Lord with Richard Croft, when he sees his daughter, thinks that he's hallucinating. And one of the questions that he asks her or asks of her is hashtag blame the liquor. But one of the questions posed to her is, did you graduate from Oxford or Cambridge? And she tells him neither. Like,
What?
come on. Yeah, like you see
Either.
neither. Oxford. Did you graduate from Oxford or Cambridge? Well, father, let me explain something. I mean, come on, man. Like, part of the appeal of the character of Laura Croft is that you knew she was a highly educated, attractive, deadly woman who could hold her own in these situations, but
Mm-hmm.
also understand that being in these situations was fun, but she still stood for something. Like, I know this is going to be a contradiction of a lot of the things that we said here, but for me, the character of Laura Croft was, I never got edge lord douchey vibes off of her. You know what I'm saying? One of the
No,
rare one of the rare characters who was capable of doing the things she was capable of doing that never felt forced.
no, man. I agree, and I think with Hollywood and the way they produce these movies and the way they have these characters presented now, I think it's almost to the point where before we looked up to them and we wanted to be them,
Mm-hmm.
you know what I'm saying, live as them vicariously, but now they're almost making them too relatable, too grounded, too like anyone can do it, including you. You could be in this movie, you could be in this role. You
Hey
are
yo.
Laura Croft. You know what I'm saying? Like
Hey, hey, that's a haymaker right there. No, that's facts. And I mean, there's a fine line because I do think the performance by the actress Alicia Vikander, she definitely made Laura Croft likable in a way that you do want to see her succeed. Like,
uh,
she's not doing the things that she's doing in this movie or in this film in spite of the viewing audience. I never
mm,
feel that way to begin with, but I mean, I will say that that character and that portrayal of the character was definitely endearing. But there's no reason to be ashamed of inheriting an abundance of wealth. But if and when we do get a sequel to this movie, which I hope that we eventually do end up getting, I'll definitely be interested. And at some point in time, I'm going to circle the wagon and figure out a way to be able to see this movie. Like, share, and subscribe. Behind the Scenes Podcast.